On March 20th, 2012, I had a conversation with Robert Schmalzbach, known in the Sasquatch community as Java Bob. The topic of this conversation revolved around his good friend, Richard Stubstad. Richard has recently fallen ill, and Robert has stepped up to speak on his behalf. This conversation will leave many of you with some questions, and I will do my best to allow all parties involved to have their voice heard. Arrangements are being made to have Richard Stubstad's story be told with greater detail, and as soon as we can, we will move forward in doing so. Any questions, comments, or requests may be directed to thebigfootreport.com, and I will do my best to reply to everyone in a timely manner. Okay, are we ready? Let's do this.
It's not...
There you go.
It's about 25 inches long. 28 inches long, I'm sorry. And if you'll notice, if I can get the toes in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Working on it. See how long they are?
Yeah.
This was found on a hill. So there's a good chance that it's really quite a bit shorter as it was sliding down the hill.
Right.
This one was found about, actually found about, 10 blocks from my front door.
Wow.
So.
You're in the thick of it, buddy.
Oh, I know. And so I got involved in this whole thing. I was here, and so many people had sightings, and Tom Biscardi showed up to investigate them, and that's where I met him.
Now that you bring up his name, since we're on the record, you can say what you want and not say what you want. How does it feel like after the fact when some people might judge you by that? Have you had problems with credibility? You said that Melba didn't want to really.
A lot of people, people like Jeff Meldrum wouldn't. He made me take his. I did an interview with him. He had me take it off their website, and just because he had second thoughts about being with Tom.
Right.
Although he and I get along fine now.
Yeah.
It took a while. He works with us all the time now. So.
Right.
But he still is not in a hurry to have his name associated with mine because my name is associated with Tom.
Right. Right.
But we do work together.
But you have no more association with business-wise, anyways.
Business-wise, he still calls me once in a while, but only if he needs something. Because, I took care of all the business. Well, yeah. I'll send you my diary from it. You can just
okay.
Right from the very beginning, you'll see what happens.
One of the reasons.
I'm just a freak when it comes to keeping records and stuff.
Well, that's great. It comes in handy. Now, for people who don't know, Richard Stubstad, did I pronounce that right? Richard's name?
Did.
His background is engineering and statistics, correct?
Correct.
So not nobody, but he is just as qualified as anybody to look at charts and genetics, and I mean maybe it might not be his background, but when it comes to algorithms and comparing numbers,
yes,
I suppose he's very qualified.
He looks at it in a very unbiased, scientific way because he's first of all he was like, well, this is a fun thing to think about, but obviously there's no such thing.
And he's a skeptic, correct? Or
not
was.
Anymore.
Yeah,
he was totally.
It wasn't until he finished looking at the DNA results and said, there's something here. I'm an engineer, and even I, a skeptic, an engineer, cannot deny what is in these results.
Yes, but prior to that, what had happened is because we started communicating back and forth as I was into this, he'd ask me pointed questions.
Mm-hmm.
And because I came into it as a skeptic as well. My background is I was an engineering manager for places like AT&T's Bell Labs. I mean, that's the most advanced engineering house in the world. So I look at things a little different than most of the people in the field, and I started out a just total skeptic. I only got involved in it because my daughter passed away, and I couldn't stay at home anymore. I just had to get out.
Right.
And when I started seeing what was out there, I started realizing, hey, there's something to this. There's got to be a way to do this. You're never gonna. If a Bigfoot walked up to you, and you had your camera gear in your hand, and you took photographs of it, shook its hand, and kissed it on the lips, and it was all on film, it wouldn't mean a thing. People would just say you faked it.
No, it's not going to mean anything until there's a corpse or we got one in a cage.
Right.
And unfortunately,
or better still, we can get people to take it seriously if we can show them DNA results. I'd like them to understand the truth here. That the bottom line is that this discovery, although a lot of people were kind of interested, I know Melba was working on this before we got involved, but she had no connection.
Right.
She didn't know that there was any. She hadn't realized there was a connection. She was still fishing for something to tie this together.
Right.
She had samples before we got involved from other people, and we had the DNA evidence, but it all showed they were human.
Right.
And it wasn't until Richard got involved that he pointed out, wait a minute, there's a statistical anomaly here.
Right.
That repeats in other vetted samples.
Uh-huh.
And that's when she took off. And as soon as she got a hold of the samples, and she had that information, she got rid of all the people involved that were with her, except for David
Pilates
and Adrian.
Right.
Adrian Erickson.
Okay. So, how long ago was it?
Actually, what happened is I kept telling her we need to get an attorney. And she finally got an attorney, and the attorney talked to her, and I'm assuming told her, look, you've got everything you need. You don't need anybody else. And she got rid of everybody else, which is against the law for her to do something. We were already in a corporation together.
Right.
And for her to do anything against the corporation is illegal in Texas and most states in this part, but that's what it amounts to. Anything that she could do that is not, anything she does to benefit her and not the corporation is illegal. It's basically what it is. What happened was, Richard brought this to her, and she was just getting overwhelmed. He said, "Look, this is what I'm finding." And she was getting overwhelmed, and she said, "Well, we need more samples." And he said, "Well, Bob may be able to get you more samples." So then she called me and talked to me, and she said she doesn't want me too involved because I was associated with Biscardi.
Right.
She's afraid that would make it less credible. And I pointed out I hadn't been working with Biscardi for quite a while, for other reasons than the hoax. A lot of people think it would do with the hoax. It didn't. It had to do with his business practice.
Right.
And so I might just send you that too. That'd be kind of fun reading. But I'm not a Biscardi basher. Okay?
Right.
So if I send it to you, it'll be for your entertainment.
Okay.
At any rate, she wanted to get these hands on her samples. She asked if there's anything I could do. I told you all that.
Yeah.
And I finally got her a couple of samples. When she had my samples and knew that she could get around me, she got rid of me. Well, then first, no, I'm sorry. Let me go back a little further.
Sure.
We decided that she needs to. This is a major announcement, a major discovery. We need to protect it. We need to do it properly. And we started looking towards getting an attorney. Well, she lawyered up without us. We were still reviewing different attorneys and whatnot, so that we could protect ourselves. In the meantime, she asked me if I would come along and work with her because she didn't know how to deal with any of this stuff. So I started dealing with different people, like people from the History Channel, and I've made movies with Tom Lyons or Ron Lyons, who does. He's the guy that owns the rights to the Ripley stuff, and he has, I think it's Big Cat Productions. And I started getting her to do those kind of things. I told her, write a try and get something out published somewhere that shows that you were the first one onto this, because you that time was us. Mm-hmm. So she did that. She wrote a little paper out there and sent it off for I think a copyright, some kind of a copyright to try and to protect us. But when she had the samples, she got rid of me, and she wanted to get rid of Adrian, and she wanted to get rid of Richard, but Richard was going to hang in there tough until he could do what he could. And Adrian said, "Look, she's got all my samples, and all this stuff. I can't, step away from this." So he hung with her, and knowing that everything was going on, and he's not comfortable with it all, but that's the only way he can keep his name in there. So he let her use it, kept her samples. And, when she got enough samples, she started sending back the ones that she got from me, so I don't think she's going to use those in the paper. But those were the original ones where we found the anomalies.
Right.
So,
now, as best as you can explain, what are these anomalies? How much of an anomaly from normal human DNA?
We found, and this is just the mitochondrial at this point. Richard found that there were 2 pair out of the approximately 740 pair that they test for mitochondrial DNA that were unlike any other mitochondrial DNA sample in the federal government's gen bank, which means it didn't match any known person in the gen bank, which is just not normal. Just not normal. Only two, and
2 out of
740. There's
740,000.
No, 740 pair is all they checked.
Gotcha.
There's 3 billion pair,
Yeah.
over 3 billion pair in the whole molecule. But what's happened now is they're far enough along that to see what species it is, they only check the mitochondrial. It's much cheaper, it's much easier, it's well known, it's a very easy thing to do, and so they can do it for a few $100.
Right. And in this 750 pair that they look at,
not 740, yeah,
or 740, 2 are different, and that
2 are different.
At first glance, it was just could be a common anomaly, but after
it could be an anomaly.
After
that's right.
2 or 3
when
or
it
4,
started to repeat, yes, and it became something statistically significant.
And these samples where the anomalies started to repeat were from all over the country, correct?
They're from all over the country,
right? Okay.
So what we have now is something that says there's something unusual about this. So she had to go ahead and get some nuclear DNA done. That's very expensive. And when she was able to get some financial backing from Wally, she was able to do that and came back with something. Richard saw one set of that came back. He only got to see one because he was still involved with her until she finally said, "That's it, you're out."
So that was when...
And that was completely different than any known human.
And that was the nuclear.
That's the nuclear. So she's onto something. There is definitely something that says we've found a new species. Our best guess, and it's only a guess because we don't have enough nuclear DNA results to go any further.
Didn't have enough at the time.
Well, she has more.
Yeah.
We don't.
Right.
But we just now made arrangements with a university.
To do more testing.
I'll just tell you, it's a major university, and it's in England.
Okay.
That will continue doing the testing for us, and we're getting some vetted samples off to them for nuclear testing.
Great.
This is a major university.
That's really a game changer, if it's done properly. And there's some question right now whether or not the peer review is legitimate that is going to take place here. And you're shaking your head already. Do you know something in regards to that?
All I know is the first one she sent out They came back and said, this is not a scientific paper. Came back to her as totally unacceptable. There was no, nothing there to be tested. Nothing, you know, it was just.
Is that because of her background? She didn't really know how to write a genetics paper. Is that because
she has no clue how to do anything on the science?
Yeah.
Our biggest fear was when she was going to write herself, is that she was going to say that she believes it's Nephilim, which it may be. Nephilim, which are the giants of old that bred
correct.
With women, modern humans.
Mm-hmm.
There were giants. They interbred with modern humans, and then they disappeared after the flood. Although they were still spoken about in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
When you start throwing religious things into a scientific paper, it will not pass.
Right. Right.
She asked me to join her. I was helping her just because it's kind of like I don't have a problem with helping people. And so I was just kind of helping her, and finally she said, "You know, I don't know a lot about this stuff. Would you come aboard and join me in this group and kind of steer me in some things and take care of some of this information?" And I said, "Sure, but I'm not going to do it for free because I just don't have the time." She said, "No, we're going to make you part of the thing, and I'm going to give you this money, you know, and I'm going to do all this stuff." None of that ever happened. But that's how I got involved. And then finally she just said, "No, I don't want to talk." She didn't throw me out exactly. She just said, "I won't talk to him ever again." Because after she was on this radio show, I said, "I think you might have gone a little over the top to pull it in a little bit." She didn't like that, and that was the end of me.
The DNA can we tell any of these things from the DNA? Size, color, weight, you know, between.
Yes.
Can
yes.
we?
That's all going to, most, not exact weight, but, you know, build and stuff like that. You can probably tell from nuclear DNA. You probably could from mitochondrial DNA, but then again, it would be see, my theory or my understanding is, I don't know this to be fact, but my understanding is that mitochondrial DNA actually comes from the outer wall of the egg.
Mm-hmm.
And the egg is always the mother's DNA. So it only comes from the mother, from mother to mother to mother to mother to mother. The nuclear DNA comes from the father, and that's when the two are combined and form an embryo inside the egg. So basically it's much more complex and there's a lot more stuff, but they can tell you what hair color there was, what eye color, all that stuff from that DNA. Yes.
Okay. So we'll be able to get more accurate details.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And my theory, again, I can't prove it. It's just a theory. They are different in different areas of the country.
Yeah.
The ones in the Midwest are much smaller. You know, the ones in the temperate parts of the Northwest are very large.
What is your personal opinion then? Did they migrate here along the Bering Land Bridge? I mean, I suppose they have to. I suppose
they have them in South America, though. I don't know if they're, but that there is some indication, like they say that the Native Americans are all from Asian descent.
Right.
But there's even Native Americans here that are probably from South America that have no Asian DNA at all.
Right.
So even that's, you know, those are just things, they say them and people buy them, and that's a fact.
Yeah,
but if you do any research, you find out it's not necessarily
the history of the human genome is complex. Very complex. I mean, we still carry Neanderthal DNA, I believe, in a large portion of our population.
They only found that out because they just recently, the Max Planck Institute was able to develop primers to check the nuclear DNA and found yes, indeed, this matches. We can now make primers for the Neanderthal. We've checked, we have their DNA on file, and now when we compare it with ours, there are matches. That's new. They didn't know. You know, people assume that DNA is a flawless science. It is not.
Yeah.
Now, of many samples, I can't tell you how many. The White River Apache Police Department responded to a call on a Bigfoot, and I talked to the officers that responded. I talked to the chief of detectives there, and they let us in their evidence room. They showed us the footprints. I mean, they were huge. And then they had some hair samples that they sent out for DNA analysis. One of the samples came out as man-made fiber, probably from a coat or something that was snagged on it. And the other turned out to be 99% human. 99% human. Well, that means that when they did the mitochondrial DNA, almost all of it matched everything they have on record for humans, so it had to be human.
Right.
Well,
end of story for most people.
End of story, and that has been the end of story for since they've started doing DNA testing.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times we sent stuff out that came back and said either contaminated or human. And then when we, now that we know this, if we went back, I'm sure we'd find that same anomaly.
Right.
That's why it's only 99% human or contaminated.
Do you think we will document this creature?
Eventually.
Yeah.